Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the recap and review of NCIS Season 10, Episode 23, Double Blind. This is the last episode before the Season 10 finale. We're getting some new things out into the air, and it's going to be really intense, so let's begin. Basically, we start off with some gossiping soldiers, a fight breaks out, people have to be restrained, someone sees the fight, and they don't want to do anything, and we're at the theme song. I'm already so confused. And then we get Ziva rolling up in her new car. Her new fabulous midlife crisis kind of car. And I love it. I love the rap song playing in the background. I love how she almost kills a man. I love how she is just so unbelievably sassy this entire scene. Gibbs and McGee interview the man who was attacking someone, and he's like, I'm being followed, I'm not crazy. And then Gibbs and McGee are like, yeah, you're not crazy, we all have great relationships with our fathers and no one on this show dies. But then it turns out, wow, he's actually not crazy. He is being followed because McGee takes a little tracking device out of his tire. Then we get the absolute pleasure, the distinguished honor of meeting Richard Parsons. Can we not meet Richard Parsons? If you can't tell, I'm not liking Richard Parsons. Then we get the other scene from the sneak peek where McGee, Tony, and Parsons are in the car. Parsons gives a very misleading first impression that he is a very amusing, happy-go-lucky fellow who just does his job well, and I don't know, it's a fun scene, but it's not Parsons, it's what he wants you to think he is, so if that's who Parsons was, if that character that they showed in the scene was who Parsons really was, I would have loved him so much. I would have thought he was such a fun character, but unfortunately, the real Parsons is nothing like this man. Maybe we'll get some kind of cool backstory that that's who Parsons was as a kid, and then he went through some traumatic event that turned him into a cold-hearted, mean person. Probably not, but I'm just going with it. They kidnap the guy. They kidnap him, that's illegal. Doesn't stop him before. They get the guy, and they bring him into interrogation, and they interview him, and the man is like, I'm not sure if that's him, I don't remember anything, I'm so confused. And that just makes everything much more complicated than it needs to be. Gibbs does a little trick to get him to admit that he knows nothing, and I love it because it gives us another glance at the outsiders seeing how Gibbs works, which is always a beautiful thing. Fantastic. But he remembers because he sees some bratwurst. The bratwurst. Ugh. That was the most unappetizing selection of bratwurst I have ever seen. I like how that's the big revelation. It's like he knows nothing, and then it's suddenly like, well, I don't bratwurst, what? I suddenly recall everything. Pot pie and spinach, and then this guy in bratwurst. Do I smell a hit spinoff? I think I do. Then Richard Parsons goes in to talk to Abby, and at first he seems really funny, and then his true colors start to come out, and he insults Abby, and no one insults Abby, and then he insults Abby's family, and no one insults Abby's family. I love how she pulls the Dick Parsons line, and then she threatens to get violent, and just imagining Abby getting into this, intense fist fight with this scrawny little investigator man is perfect. I'm gonna say she would win. I really am. Ziva and Tony are walking down a hallway. Everything's just beautiful and perfectly fine and normal. And then suddenly, Richard Dick Parsons pops out of the investigator room and is like, hey, can I talk to you? And Ziva plays it cool. She's like, sure. And then Tony's about to walk on by. And then he stops. And he veers into the interrogation room. And Ziva's very confident and almost a little cocky because she's just chilling there. And, investigator Sirius, he knows how to destroy cockiness. He interrogates her, and she slowly becomes more and more irritated and agitated until she suddenly breaks. And then the final straw, the piece of luggage that broke the camel's back, was him bringing up her and Adam Turns out she slept with Adam, which is an endangerment of foreign affairs, and then Ziva tells him to go to HE double hockey sticks, and then Tony bursts in. He's like, interview's over, and he stands his ground when Parsons like, no, you don't have the right to do this, which he really doesn't. But Denozo does not back down. He's like, this was over 2 seconds ago, out. And he walks out, and Denozo tries to start a conversation with her, and she says over 10 seconds ago and walks out. And he walks away with a picture of Adam, and I originally thought that he was gonna like shred it or burn it or do some kind of ritual with it, which I think would have been a hilarious twist. But that is not what happens, and I'm very curious to know what would have happened if Denozo had not burst in. Like, what would have gone down between Parsons and Ziva? Because Ziva was getting angry, he was getting empowered. She could have stormed out, which is what I think she was going to do anyway, but you never know. She could have sat back down, she could have fought him, gave him a nice punch to the face, because we know how she reacts to a desperate man. And then plot twist, the thing that we were working on with the case gets blown up. Why? We also find out Shamil worked for the government agency, and things are just looking worse and worse for Ziva at this point. But we also see that the team is banding together and they're sticking together and they're still keeping that very close family dynamic when the going gets tough, and I love it. And I know we are definitely going to see more of that in Damned If You Do. Also, Shamil, as a young man, was pretty fine. They cut such a spectacular line, I am finding out from Twitter, because Palmer would have called him pretty. Would have been such a fantastic line. Then we get a scene at the explosion between Tony and Ziva, and this is such a beautifully well done scene, and it's so beautiful and it's so heartbreaking. Ziva was saying that she just slept with Adam because she felt alone, and Tony was like, I told you you were not alone. Tony is so hurt, and Ziva's just falling apart, and it's the ultimate storm that's happening between them. I understand why Tony is hurt, but Ziva is a grown woman, a grown consenting adult. Is this a healthy way of coping? No. Is there a better way she could have gone about it? Absolutely. Is she intentionally hurting someone? No. That's the thing. Ziva did not go in and was like, I'm gonna have this one night stand, I'm gonna make Tony so jealous. That's my entire goal. That's going to be so awesome. No, she was depressed. She was alone in her mind, not in actuality, but in her mind she was very alone. That's why she did it. She did not say, man, this is going to hurt Tony big time. But Tony's getting mad at her for sleeping with this man, and I understand why he's frustrated, but she is not his at this point. It's not like you're my girlfriend, we're in a committed relationship, you should not be sleeping around. At this point, their official status is best friends, which I will get to later. It's not fair of her to get all the blame for this. We know that when the going gets tough, she sleeps with people. We've seen that since Recoil in season 5. We've seen it with Michael in that episode, we've seen it with Michael Rivkin, and now we're seeing it with Adam. And that's just how she deals with things. And people were saying that Adam is taking advantage of her. I don't really think he should have agreed to it. I don't feel like it was right, but then again, they do kind of have the same mindset of that activity. Tony's seeing it as this big love confession, like this declaration, and Adam's just kind of seeing it like a form of exercise, like, you know, like a run around the block or something. I think everyone has a little bit of blame, but I also think that no one here is completely guilty of what they're being charged for, if you will. Tony has the right to be upset. I think that Ziva went about it the wrong way, and I don't think he can be like, we're done, you know, this is over. Because it's not over. In fact, it really hasn't begun. They're definitely gonna have to talk about that. Anyway, we go to MTAC, find out Ziva's clearance has been suspended. Oh no. And that's not a good thing. Denozo steps out, follows Parsons into the elevator, and they do a really cool scene. I'm digging all the shots here. I am in love with how it's edited, and you know, it's very intense. Like, McGee and Ziva are finding things out, and then Tony is defending his best friend. You don't mess with the bear's best friend. That is the moral of this episode. But it turns out the bear's best friend doesn't need defending. It's the bear's boss, the big man, Leon Vance. Then we get this kind of cool interrogation scene. It's very sad. It's between Gibbs and the suspect. This season they've been very good at making you feel emotionally connected to the people involved in the case, like Ruby Lemire and now this guy, and I just feel so much sympathy for him because even though he did this horrible thing, he's just felt his entire life that no one's cared about him. He finally has someone who cares about him. He finally has something in his life that makes him feel like he's not worthless. It's not like, oh, he wanted to take over the world, or, you know, I wanted to be rich. He is doing it as like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is very deep, and I'm very glad that they threw this character in there. McGee also has his own office now, which is perfect with the food and the jazz music. It's amazing. It's the perfect office. He's living the dream. Then Ziva and Gibbs go to confront, and Ziva sees a baby, and Ziva has a little back and forth with the baby, and it's perfect. She needs children. Now, looking at you, Tony DeNozo. Then everything gets real. Basically, we're back at NCIS. McGee intercepts a phone call from Parsons. Then they find out, wait, it's not Ziva, it's not Vance, it's someone else. Who is this person? They run to the bullpen to tell him, and turns out it's Gibbs. And all these men in black suits come in, and Parsons is the cult leader, and he goes up to Gibbs, and he's like, Leroy Jethro Gibbs, are you willing to take full responsibility for your team? And Gibbs is like, what do you think? And it boofs, and we are in finale territory. The ending was kind of expected, sort of, on some level. Like, I don't think it was certain. It was kind of like, will they, won't they have this happen? But I thought it was very nicely done, and it leads to an intriguing question, like, is Gibbs finally going to have all this come down on him? Is he finally going to be charged for what he really was supposed to be doing? Because he's kind of spent his entire life doing the wrong things for the right reason. He's finally going to have to face that, and I cannot wait to see the team come behind him and stick up for him. I also can't wait to see who is back. I am so excited for that. Very nicely done episode. I thought it was nicely written, nicely acted, the character development was nice. Even the characters I didn't like were still very nicely developed characters. I have nothing more to say. It got me so excited for the finale, and it's going to be super intense any way you go about it. And it's my first NCIS finale, so I'm really, really excited.